single chemical spill in Michigan has put 15 workers in hospital and becomes the 6th major incident at the same facility in just 10 years. This major event highlights both the vulnerabilities of our operations but raises questions on how often incidents of this scale can be allowed to occur. While Michigan's LG Energy Solutions plant scrambles to explain another safety failure, New Zealand is providing the rest of the world a view of what economic decline looks like when you rank near the bottom globally for income growth. Coming up on this week's update, we examine how a pattern of safety violations reveals systemic risks in negligence of supply chain resilience, how New Zealand's economic struggles demonstrate the lingering effects of pandemic policy decisions, and we'll dive into our quickfire segment covering 5 emerging threats, including the largest cyber attack ever recorded, Russian hackers targeting Microsoft, and a crisis in the food and beverage world. Welcome to Unbreakable Ventures. I'm Ollie Law, and you are listening to our fortnightly risk update where we dive into emerging and current risks from around the world, focusing on some big stories and some you may have missed. We use the categories from the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report to simplify the threats we're monitoring, but we also do some deep dives and interviews with industry peers. It's Monday the 8th of September, and we're covering the world's global threats over the last fortnight. So grab a coffee and let's get into it. Saturday afternoon in Holland, Michigan, 15 workers rushed to hospital, a mass casualty incident declared. This isn't a natural disaster or terrorist attack. It was a chemical spill at a battery manufacturing plant that's becoming disturbingly familiar with those in local emergency services. LG Energy Solutions, a major supplier for electric vehicle batteries, experienced what they're calling a, quote, solvent spill at their Holland facility. Within minutes, workers were experiencing breathing difficulties severe enough to trigger a hazmat response and mass casualty protocols. While all 15 hospitalized workers survived with non-life-threatening injuries, this incident represents something far more concerning than an isolated workplace accident. This is the 6th major incident at this facility in 10 years. In July, a contractor died after becoming trapped in machinery. In 2023, another worker died from head injuries during construction. The facility has accumulated $175,000 in Michigan OSHA fines, including 2 willful violations, the most serious category OSHA can issue. A willful violation means the employer either knowingly ignored safety requirements or acted with plain indifference to employee safety. This is particularly significant for a few reasons. LG Energy Solutions isn't just any manufacturer. They're a critical supplier in the electric vehicle supply chain, producing batteries for major automotive companies. When facilities like this experience safety incidents, they don't just affect the immediate workforce, they can disrupt entire manufacturing ecosystems. So who does this put most at risk? If you operate manufacturing facilities with hazardous materials, this incident should concern you. Chemical manufacturing, battery production, automotive suppliers, any industry handling dangerous substances faces similar risks. The pattern at LG suggests that even well-resourced companies can develop systemic safety management failures. If you're part of the electric vehicle supply chain, you should be asking hard questions about your supplier's safety records. A single facility shutdown due to regulatory action can cascade through entire production networks. OSHA investigations following serious incidents can result in operational restrictions or complete shutdowns until violations are corrected. And if you operate in jurisdictions with strict workplace safety enforcement, this incident demonstrates how quickly violations accumulate. The facility's history suggests a pattern rather than isolated incidents, which typically draws increased regulatory scrutiny. This event may influence regulatory bodies to seek tougher restrictions globally, and that might affect any business that has some form of investment in manufacturing of this kind. We have looked at some mitigations for this update and considered a lens that spreads further than just the electric vehicle world. First, establish comprehensive hazmat incident response plans that go beyond basic compliance. Work directly with your local fire departments to conduct regular drills using actual chemical scenarios relevant to your operations. Historically, we have found that emergency services leap at the opportunity to be a part of a large-scale scenario exercise. Having access to large facilities is valuable to them. Second, implement proactive safety management systems that exceed minimum regulatory standards. Regular third-party safety audits can identify risks before they become regulatory violations or workplace incidents. Track leading indicators like near-miss reports, safety training completion rates, and equipment maintenance schedules. Third, if you're managing supply chain risks, start monitoring your suppliers' safety records as part of vendor risk assessments. OSHA violation histories are public records. Companies with patterns of serious violations represent concentration risks in your supply chain. Finally, develop alternative sourcing agreements for critical components. The electric vehicle industry is learning that concentration in specific suppliers or geographic regions creates vulnerability. Diversifying suppliers based on operational resilience, not just cost, becomes essential when dealing with facilities that handle hazardous materials. This incident may not feel relevant to many of our listeners, but the lessons and vulnerabilities of a manufacturer like LG is timeless. Take Ericsson back in 2000, whose key supplier experienced a small factory fire. While this was mitigated within hours, it delayed the production of core chips used in all Ericsson phones. As a result of their lack of business continuity planning, Ericsson suffered a loss of $1.5 billion and ultimately merged with Sony to save the brand. During the same event with the same supplier, Nokia activated their business continuity plan and actually achieved a 48% profit and 58% increase in sales during the same period. There will be many losers out of this LG chemical leak and very few winners. Make sure you are the latter. Before we move on to our second threat update this week, let's look at 5 quick-fire emerging threats we've picked up throughout August and September. These will be noteworthy stories we think you should know about, but less detailed than our 2 core threats analysed. Cloudflare has blocked the largest distributed denial of service attack ever recorded, 11.5 terabits per second of malicious traffic lasting just 35 seconds. This shatters the previous record of 7.3 terabits from just 2 months ago, demonstrating the rapid escalation in cyber attack capabilities using compromised cloud infrastructure. In a similar update, Amazon's security team disrupted a sophisticated campaign by Russian state-sponsored hackers APT29, who compromised legitimate websites to steal Microsoft credentials. The attackers used fake Cloudflare verification pages to trick users into authorizing attacker-controlled devices, highlighting the evolving tactics of state-sponsored espionage. Canada's telecommunications regulator now requires internet and phone providers to report major outages within 2 hours and provide detailed incident reports within 30 days. This reflects a global trend toward faster disclosure requirements that businesses should expect across jurisdictions. If you think this could impact you, update continuity plans to expect faster public disclosures from carriers. Environmental degradation in Indonesia's East Halmahera region continues threatening water security and local communities, highlighting broader environmental risks across Southeast Asia, where rapid development creates systemic vulnerabilities for businesses dependent on stable natural resources. Similar water crises occur throughout the world, making this crisis an all too common one. The food and beverage industry faces simultaneous operational, environmental, and digital disruptions. 43% of operations leaders cite workforce challenges as their biggest concern, while climate events threaten essential crops and cyber attacks have hit major retailers like Marks and Spencer. These incidents will continue to increase the costs at checkout and make some products inaccessible to parts of the world. Further sources and references can be found in the footnotes of this podcast. But without further ado, let's look at our second threat update this week. New Zealand is often seen as an example for many nations around the world. It proudly stood as a shining example of pandemic management during the COVID lockdown era. The nation's athletes successfully compete on the world stage against countries with seemingly endless funding, and it's becoming a key Hollywood player for studios, directors, and locations alike. But when it comes to economic decline, this is an example the nation would rather forget. Chief economists have found New Zealand to rank 37th out of 43 across developed countries for recent income growth. And this could mean key investors look elsewhere when diversifying their portfolio and economic ties. Let's understand why this is happening. New Zealand's economic performance has deteriorated dramatically. Over the past decade, the country ranks 25th out of 43 comparable developed nations for real GDP per capita growth. But in just the last 2 years, that ranking has plummeted to 37th place. Only 6 countries performed worse: Germany, Canada, Luxembourg, Austria, Ireland, and Estonia. This isn't just about statistics. Real GDP per capita, adjusted for purchasing power, shows how much economic value each person in the country actually produces. When this declines relative to peer nations, it indicates fundamental economic weaknesses that affect everything from investment attractiveness to currency stability. Economists point to what they're calling COVID overheating as the primary driver. During the pandemic, New Zealand implemented ultra-low interest rates and heavy government borrowing to stimulate the economy. Infometrics chief forecaster Gareth Kiernan explains that this essentially borrowed economic growth from the future. Now, the post-pandemic adjustment is proving rougher than anticipated. BNZ chief economist Mike Jones highlights a critical labour market shift. New Zealand moved from a tight labour market in 2022 to 2023 to an oversupplied one, weakening wage growth faster than in comparable countries. The SEEK Advertised Salary Index shows New Zealand wage growth at just 2.2% year on year, lagging behind the US at 2.4%, Australia at 3.3%, and the UK at 5.9%. Westpac chief economist Kelly Eckold notes that while many countries experienced post-COVID slowdowns, New Zealand had an especially strong pandemic bounce, making the subsequent fall more pronounced. The country now faces structural challenges, particularly low productivity growth that has constrained economic performance for years. So who does this most impact? Well, if you have business operations or investments in New Zealand, declining real income growth signals, reduced consumer purchasing power, and potential market contraction. Business expansion plans may require reassessment given these economic headwinds. Companies operating in industries dependent on New Zealand exports should prepare for potential supply disruptions or cost increases. Agricultural products, tourism services, and commodity exports may face pricing pressures as the domestic economy struggles. Organisations considering New Zealand as a business location should factor in the current economic trajectory. The performance suggests structural challenges beyond cyclical downturns, including productivity issues and post-pandemic policy adjustments that may persist. Let's look at what we might do to mitigate. First, businesses heavily exposed to New Zealand markets should diversify into other Asia-Pacific markets with stronger growth trajectories. Consider Australia, Singapore, or emerging ASEAN markets as alternatives for expansion or investment. Second, implement currency risk management strategies for New Zealand dollar exposure. This includes those who are operating out of New Zealand. The economic weakness suggests potential for significant currency volatility as monetary policy adjusts to economic conditions. Hedging strategies become essential for businesses with substantial NZD exposure. Third, reevaluate New Zealand-focused investment strategies. While current weakness may present opportunities for contrarian investors, ensure adequate risk management for extended economic headwinds. The structural nature of the challenges suggests recovery may take longer than typical cyclical downturns. Finally, monitor policy responses from the New Zealand government. Economic performance, this poor relative to peer nations, typically triggers significant policy changes. These could include fiscal policy adjustments, regulatory changes, or monetary policy shifts that affect business operating conditions. That's it for today's update. If you need help navigating these threats or building a plan to protect your business, the same advisors who collate these insights are here to help. Head over to unbreakableventures.com to book a complimentary chat online with one of them. And if you found this resource useful, consider subscribing to Unbreakable Ventures or sharing the article with your network. After all, resilience is about community and communication. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, stay safe.
Unbreakable Ventures is brought to you by the Senior Advisory Team at Fixing, a boutique resilience advisory based in the Oceania, ASEAN and India regions. Special thanks to our sponsor and Europe's leading SaaS provider for resilience software, F24. Our resources are researched and published by industry specialists across New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia and the UK. This podcast provides advice and opinion on disaster recovery and the threat landscape. The content is not a substitute for expert guidance during a crisis. Unbreakable Ventures is trademarked by Fixing Consulting Partners, a Fixing Group company.